The lights inside the Good Morning America studio were warm and bright, but the atmosphere was anything but. There was an unusual buzz in the air. As everyone from the crew to the audience knew, this wasn't going to be a typical celebrity interview. Johnny Depp, still a polarizing figure despite his legal vindication, was moments away from walking onto the set for his first live television interview in years. Asterisk, as the show returned from a commercial break, George Stephanopoulos glanced down at his cue cards, his expression unreadable. Johnny Depp entered from the left, his silhouette tall and unmistakable dark jeans, tailored charcoal blazer, black boots, and his signature sunglasses hiding eyes that had seen too much of both adoration and vilification. Asterisk, Johnny, thank you for joining us, George said, extending a hand that Depp shook with noticeable reluctance. Asterisk, thanks for having me, Depp replied coolly, settling into his chair and adjusting the lapel of his jacket. Asterisk, George wasted no time. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You've returned to the big screen after years of legal battles and public scrutiny. Do you think Hollywood truly forgave you, or did it just forget? Asterisk, the question was like a match to dry tinder. Depp tilted his head, offering a small smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Asterisk, well, that depends, George, he said, leaning forward. Are we here to talk about my work, or are we here to rehash a courtroom drama that the public already watched unfold in real time? Asterisk, George pressed on, undeterred. I think a lot of people still have questions. Serious accusations were made very publicly. Many viewers might wonder if this comeback is more about marketing than redemption. Asterisk, Depp's smirk faded. Redemption, he echoed, voice suddenly sharp. I didn't crawl out of the shadows begging for redemption. I fought for my name. I went to court. I faced the accusations, and I was cleared. Asterisk, the studio audience shifted uncomfortably. The tension between the two men was undeniable now, palpable like static in the air. The control room debated whether to cut to a commercial, but it was already too late. This was live, and the fire had started. Asterisk, George, maintaining his composure, continued. But isn't it fair to ask if fame and fortune shield people from full accountability? That perhaps the court of public opinion plays by different rules. Asterisk, Depp removed his sunglasses slowly and stared George down. Let me ask you something, George. When did we decide that courtrooms weren't enough? That an actor had to keep proving himself to talk show hosts and morning viewers who were fed half-truths and tabloid headlines? Asterisk, George interjected. I'm just asking what many people are thinking. Johnny? Asterisk, no, Depp said firmly. You're not asking what they're thinking. You're telling them how to think. Asterisk, a hush fell over the set. The live audience, initially excited to see the beloved actor in person, now sat in stunned silence. Depp's face was tense, voice steady but edged with bitterness. Asterisk, you want to talk about accountability? He asked, raising his voice slightly. Let's talk about the accountability of a media machine that tried to ruin a man's life. Before a single piece of evidence was reviewed, where was the balance then? Where was the responsibility to get the facts right? Asterisk, George tried to steer the conversation back toward Depp's new film, but the actor wasn't having it. Asterisk, I came here today because I believed I could talk about my work, he said. About a film that speaks to pain, healing, and resilience. But instead, I walked into another trial except. This time, the judge is a morning show anchor. Asterisk, the room remained frozen as Depp reached for his lapel mic and yanked it off. A producer standing off camera whispered frantically into a headset. George leaned forward, trying one last time. Johnny, please relive asterisk. I know exactly where I am, Depp snapped, standing up. And I hope every viewer sees this for what it is. Another ambush, another spectacle. Asterisk with that. Johnny Depp turned and strode off set, the cameras struggling to keep up as the crew scrambled to respond. George sat silently, collecting his thoughts as the director signaled to cut to commercial. Asterisk, but the damage had already been done. Across the country and soon across the globe, the headlines were writing themselves. Johnny Depp walks off GMA live. Within minutes, social media platforms exploded. Millions watched the clip, dissected every line, every glare, every pause. And whether they supported him or not, one thing was clear. This interview was going to be remembered. The chaos backstage at Good Morning America was immediate and electric. As Johnny Depp disappeared through the studio exit, a flurry of activity erupted behind the cameras. Producers shouted over earpieces. Assistants scrambled to adjust the schedule. and PR teams from both ABC and Depp's camp huddled in urgent, hushed discussions. Johnny, flanked by two of his personal security staff, moved swiftly through the hallways, his jaw clenched and eyes cold with fury. He wasn't speaking, not yet. His publicist trailed behind, phone buzzing nonstop with calls and texts. As they reached the side exit, she caught up, breathless. Asterisk, you want to say something to the press or post something? She asked. Asterisk, he paused just before stepping outside. Then finally spoke. Let them talk. They were always going to anyway. Asterisk back on set. George Stephanopoulos sat stiffly in his chair as the studio returned from its abrupt commercial break. Well, he said, forcing a strained smile, that was certainly unexpected. Johnny Depp, ladies and gentlemen. The audience gave a light, uncertain clap, more out of confusion than applause. George quickly pivoted to the next segment, but the damage was irreversible. Asterisk across social media platforms. The explosion was instant. Within minutes, hashtag Johnny Depp, hashtag GMA Meltdown, and hashtag George vs. Depp were trending globally. Clips from the live interview were already circulating, chopped into short, viral soundbites. One 10-second video Depp saying, "You're not asking what? They're thinking you're telling them how to think," was reshared millions of times in the first hour alone. Asterisk fans flooded the internet in support of Depp, calling the interview a setup and praising his refusal to be gaslit on national television. Memes appeared within the hour, one showing George hiding behind his note cards with the caption, "When you try to grill a pirate and get burned instead." Another showed Depp walking off set with the text, "Captain Jack doesn't do morning talk shows." Asterisk, but not everyone sided with Depp. Some media outlets labeled his behavior as volatile, unprofessional, and proof that he still hasn't reckoned with the full weight of his past. Pundits debated the optics on news panels, arguing whether Depp had stood up for himself or thrown away an opportunity to finally clear the air in a more thoughtful manner. Asterisk, by mid-afternoon, Depp had posted a short but cutting message on Instagram. To his 40 million followers, asterisk, respect is a two-way street. I walked into that studio to talk about my film. I walked out when it became something else entirely. JD asterisk, the post hit like a grenade. Within an hour, it had over 5 million likes, including reactions from fellow actors, musicians, and even a few directors. The comments were a battlefield of support, criticism, and endless debate. Asterisk, later that day, ABC issued its own carefully worded statement. Asterisk, this morning's interview with Mr. Johnny Depp did not go as planned. Good Morning America respects the views of our guests and regrets the unexpected conclusion to what was intended to be a meaningful discussion about his latest project. Asterisk, though the statement avoided directly assigning blame, it was clear the network wanted to move on. Asterisk, but the story wasn't done. Asterisk, when Depp's film The Hollow Road premiered 3 days later at the Tribeca Film Festival, the crowd outside the venue was triple the usual size. Paparazzi barked questions about the GMA incident as Depp stepped onto the red carpet, dressed in a midnight blue suit with no tie and his hair tied back loosely. He paused for a moment before addressing the press. Asterisk, I've said what I needed to say, he told the reporter. Now I let the work speak. Asterisk, critics who viewed the film praised it as one of his most emotionally raw performances in years. The audience gave it a standing ovation. At the post-screening Q&A, he spoke eloquently about trauma, transformation, and redemption, but stayed clear of any mention of the morning show fiasco. Asterisk, the public began to shift their attention. The narrative was no longer about a dramatic walk-off, it was about an artist reclaiming his space. For every headline that screamed Depp melts down on GMA, there was another praising his resilience. Depp rises from the ashes with career roll. Asterisk, within a week, The Hollow Road topped box office charts in limited release, drawing both curious viewers and loyal fans. Streaming platforms bid aggressively for distribution rights. Suddenly, the talk wasn't about whether Johnny Depp deserved a second chance, it was how he'd made it count. Asterisk, in the end, the morning clash became more than just a viral moment. It marked a turning point. Johnny Depp had faced the fire again, not in a courtroom, but on live television, and walked out standing tall. For better or worse, he refused to play by the rules of a system that once tried to erase him. Asterisk, and this time, the world was listening. Asterisk.